Let me tell you a story about a friend of mine who started producing around the same time that I did. He was a musician in bands just like me, and he wanted to get his start with producing and recording artists. There was another band that he was friends with, so he reached out and offered to produce and mix an EP for them for free as a portfolio piece to show other artists and to get his name out there as a producer. They got to working on the songs, and after a solid month straight of grinding through recording live drums, guitars, bass, and getting the vocals down, the band wasn't exactly stoked with how some of the songs were coming out. After a few rounds of rewrites, retracking, and fine-tuning things, they were finally to a point where they were happy with the tracks that they had laid down. Then came the mixing process, which was equally tedious with rounds and rounds of revisions, and finally the songs were completed. That just meant that the artist had to come up with album art, a release date, film some music videos, and eventually release it. Well, around that time, bad started to get worse and the band started having differences in opinions. After a couple months of butting heads, the band decided it was best to split up. Where did this leave our producer buddy? In the same place he was at the start of the story, with no portfolio, the same $0 earned recording, and with a few more gray hairs. Should that buddy of mine have produced that album for free? The obvious answer is no, and when I was just starting out, I made sure to do things a lot differently. But what am I supposed to do when I have no experience, I hear you asking? Well, lucky for you, I've got some solid ways to build a portfolio that won't leave you stressed and with nothing to show for your time, and I'm going to get to that later in the video. But before we get into that, let's talk about the essential question of should music producers work for free? It's a common refrain in the creative industries that you can't pay your bills with exposure. While offering up jobs for exposure is generally a way that artists or clients will exploit excited young creators who might be a little bit desperate, there's a case that is made from lots of older producers that when you're first starting out, you will have to work for free to prove your worth. Putting my personal opinions aside here, that is probably true in a certain type of studio world. Audio engineering and music production schools will often have a requirement for students to take an internship at a studio in exchange for credit hours, which basically drops the demand for newbie wannabe producers side of the supply and demand scale down to zero, especially in most cities that have any sort of music college. Whenever I had interns at my old commercial studio, I always made sure to pay them an hourly rate for their time, so those kids weren't working for free anyways. And as an aside, I'm thinking about making a video about the ethics of studio internships, so if you're interested in that, let me know in a comment and subscribe so you don't miss it. So most studios do have an expectation that some engineers and producers will do work for free. But I have a feeling that most of the people watching this video are aspiring freelance or self-employed producers and engineers looking to start their own studio business, and you'll mostly be looking to get work from bands and artists, not other studio owners. Now, I have talked to producers of all ages and genres who have told stories about the times that they took a chance and worked for free for artists. While you may hear about a guy who went out on a limb and produced a band who turned out to be the next Nirvana, launching their career into the stratosphere, there are just as many times that it kind of just turns into nothing. Is that a risk that you should take? Ultimately, that's going to be up to the individual. If you really think that an opportunity is too good to pass up, nobody would blame you for doing a free project every once in a blue moon. However, you should be realistic about too good to be true situations. If Bruno Mars himself emails you asking to produce some beats for free, it is entirely possible that it could be worth doing. However, it's equally likely that you're just getting scammed by someone who wants a free beat or three. When it comes to pitches or doing test projects to secure future work, I think it's smart to take those on a case-by-case basis. If someone asks you to do a test master of a single because they're looking for someone to master their 13-song album, I wouldn't judge you for doing that single on spec. However, I'd also suggest that you ask how many other mastering engineers they've asked to do test masters. If they say none, go ahead and do the test master. If they say 50, run the opposite direction as fast as you can. And I'm going to draw a distinction between free work and work that's paid with residuals for the sake of this video, but I will say that I've made dozens of songs for TV and film that I got no upfront fee for and instead got paid in royalties. However, an artist would have to be really huge for me to produce an album just for royalties. Chances are, if they're big enough for it to be worth it for me to do the project just for royalties, they have the budget to pay me my typical rate or some combination of day rate and royalties. I will say that there are lots of times where I'll do a little task here and there for free because it's just a favor for someone I like. If one of my buddies needs a quick guitar arrangement or some drums programmed, I'm not opposed to just cranking it out when I have a free hour. Since we do know that the market value of the dreaded exposure payment is right around $0, the short answer is that no, producers shouldn't work for free. I believe that all labor has value and that people should be compensated fairly for their labor. And in a perfect world, no producer would ever be asked to create that valuable product for free. However, it still happens to new and up-and-coming audio folks every day, and even experienced producers and engineers will occasionally have to choose between working for free or not working on a project at all. So let's say hypothetically that you do accept an artist's kind offer to produce and record their music for free. What should you expect to get out of that deal? So imagine you have an offer to work at an amazing company, say Pixar, and you get to contribute to an incredible movie. Perhaps it's Monsters, Inc. I don't know, plug your favorite Pixar movie in here. Once it's out, your name is in the credits, and lots of people who you've already connected with will know that you worked on that movie. That is great news. However, if your next move is to quit your job at Pixar and just sit on the couch and wait for DreamWorks to call you up to work on their next movie, let's say it's Minions, I don't know, you're gonna end up sitting there for a long time. To get your next gig working on Minions, you're going to need to go in and do some interviews. Yes, your awesome work on Monsters, Inc. will look fantastic on your resume, but that's really all that it is, something that goes on your resume. Unless someone at DreamWorks sees your specific work on Monsters, Inc., wades through the credits to find your name, and then combs Google for your contact information, you're going to be the one that's responsible for getting you that next job. Working on music is pretty much the exact same way. The first time that you work with an artist that is respected in your city's music scene, you may have the idea that your schedule will be slammed with artists looking to get the same results. While you may book a handful of projects off the back of that free work, it won't be something that happens overnight. It takes time for word to spread and for artists to make decisions about when and where they want to make their next record. When the first artist that you are already a fan of comes knocking, you might feel a little bit starstruck, imagining the dream career that will start to take off once the music is released. However, it rarely plays out that way, so when you do work for free, or even for a deep discount, you need to be careful with setting your own expectations. But let's move on to some alternatives to producing for free that you can use to buff up that empty portfolio. So, while my friend spent a long time working on a free album, I took a different path. The first method of quote-unquote free work that you can employ is something that's actually called mock work. Mock work is when you create something of your own with the intention of using it to show potential clients the type of work that you enjoy making. You could put together a few singles by yourself, or ask friends that are also musicians to get involved, or any combination of the two. There is one huge benefit to creating mock work as opposed to free work. You are in creative control, so you don't have to compromise to please a client. There have been times where artists that I've worked with have wanted to take their music in a direction that may not showcase my vision of great songwriting or production, but since it's their music, they're within their rights to do so. With mock work, you can steer the art into a path that showcases your idea of a great production, meaning your portfolio is a real representation of what you do. What a portfolio really boils down to is providing an answer to the question, can they do this work well? If your portfolio has great sounding songs in it that you recorded and produced, most artists won't care if you also wrote and performed them, and they may even be a little more impressed. The second method of free work that I actually suggest you do is creating alternate versions for artists. For example, if there's a singer-songwriter that you really love, you could reach out to them and offer to create a more stripped-down acoustic version of your favorite song of theirs. This is a great idea since you already know that you like the song, and they'll probably be less precious with it since the full version of the song is already released. Another option that I used to do all the time is recording live in-studio versions of artist songs and getting them filmed to put on YouTube. I got to know lots of great artists by doing live sessions and was able to create lots of great content that promoted my recording studio and their music at the same time. Now, the third and probably my favorite way to do this is to handpick an artist to work with for a deep discount or for free, but to do it the right way. And what I mean by the right way is this. First, you are going to reach out to someone that sounds a lot like your ideal client of the future. It could be an artist in your scene that you respect and that is active playing shows and is like really doing it as an artist, you know? You'll explain to them that you've been getting pretty good at recording and you want to start producing professionally. Because of this, you want to do a song or two for free as a test to nail down your workflow, try out your new gear, and to see how much you should be charging per song. This is definitely not a lie, since those are two important things to know before you start promoting yourself. It also sets the expectation that you may run into a few technical difficulties throughout the process. You should also let them know that you're hoping to use it as a portfolio piece, so you're willing to put in the effort to make sure that it sounds great, but you want to be able to put it in your portfolio quickly once it's finished. You will also want to ask them to refrain from telling everyone that you did the recordings for free. Ask them to tell people what your rate is instead. By keeping that fact under wraps, you'll steer clear of some potential clients that you really want to avoid. Once you've nailed down an artist and you get them on your schedule, make sure that you knock it out of the park so they're happy with the song, because they're going to be the first word of mouth marketing that you have, and you want them to be spreading good words about your work once you finish the project. This method avoids the handful of problems that my friend faced. By taking on a smaller project, just 1 or 2 songs, you'll avoid creating months of free work for yourself. By being the one who reaches out first, you can make sure that everyone's expectations are set properly for the recordings, and by setting it up as a portfolio piece as well as a test project for your new business, you can make sure that everyone is on board to help create something that sounds great and shows off your production as well as their music, and that it comes out in a timely manner. Between mock work, making alternate versions, and doing some test songs, you should have no problem creating a diverse portfolio that will help you attract more production clients. So, if you're ready to get yourself out there and start producing full-time, this video right here will help you start making those next moves toward becoming a full-time producer.